Alright. Alright. So this is where we left off, right? So we have our, what do we have right here? What are these? Surfaces. Good job, guys. Good job. Now, it's so again in Rhino world, right? I mean, let me copy this real quick because again I could start making a copy of this right here, and I could maybe start moving, right, some of these objects, kind of on top of each other, right, and start kind of working with that. But what starts happening, right, that we start getting that, right? I mean, it's not clear. So you see what happens in Rhino world, right? And let me go on to shade it, and let me go to zoom selected. Is that right now, since the surfaces are infinitely thin, they're sharing, right, this space, digital space, right, this space, and that's not possible in the real world, right? You cannot fuse two things to kind of like occupy the same space at the same time, at least not yet, right? So there's some sort of a glitch which you can start seeing. You see how it kind of like flickers and kind of like it does that. Sometimes it shows that, sometimes it shows this. It's just telling you right here, right? If I click on top of it, it's telling me, hey, there's three things on top of each other. That cannot work. So I must give it some sort of a depth, right? And I think some of you guys that were working already with the software, I think G1, for example, you already started doing this, right? Right, G1, you gave it some depth, right? Now, does any of you know how thick the paper is? Me neither, right? I don't know, but maybe 164, 132nd, I don't know, but something. We must give it something, okay? So notice that I made a copy. Now I realized that I am copying two things, right? Remember that we started with the curves and the surfaces. So right now the curves and the surfaces are still there, meaning that if I move the curve or the surface, the curve's still there. I don't need the surface the curve anymore, right? So I'm actually gonna go in here, right, and I'm holding shift to select just the inside of this, right? Copy this right here. Whoops, copy with two O's, right? And I move this, copy this right here, right? So that I leave the curves behind, right? And the only thing that I end up with is the surfaces. Now, as you work on Rhino, you're gonna see this menu that pop up. You're gonna select something, or you're selecting something. Let's say that you click right there, and notice that this selection menu comes out. Rhino is not sure what you're trying to select because there's more than one thing sharing space, right? So in this case, you have a curve, you have another curve, you have the surface, and you have those surface, right? So that's the way the Rhino is. Hey, human, like I know you're trying to select something. These are all the different things that you could be trying to select. You could be trying to select that curve, which is the blue curve, the pink curve, the other blue surface, or the pink surface. So two things that can help you is the color, the layer color, and also their type. Is it a curve or is it a surface? All right. So whenever you see those menus, right, that's just what it means. Rhino doesn't know what you're trying to select. You just have to go into the menu and manually select, yeah, I want that surface, right? Or just click somewhere where it's evidently that nothing is overlapping, right? Like if you click right there in the middle, that's the only thing that I can click on, right? But if I click on the edge, right, there's the curve and there's the soft surface sharing space. Okay, so I have now made the copies for this, right? So let's give them some volume. Does anyone know what command to use for that? Extrude, right? So extrude, right? And um, just know that extrusions come in different types. Correct, right? So we want to do extrude surface, which that command would be extrude surface, extrude SRF, SRF, right? Extrude SRF for surface. All right. Now select surfaces to extrude, right? I'm going to do one to begin with, right? So I'm going to do that one right there, and then I press enter. Now notice, right, that I have an extrusion. Right? I have an extrusion. Now I can see right away that something is off, which is what? Okay, that's a great observation, right? That's another thing that is off. It's not capped, right? It seems to not be capped. But what else? I'm on the wrong layer, right? So it looks a little bit pink, right? It's like, oh, I'm on the half 4, right? Let's see if this works actually. Can I change layer in the middle of a command? I guess you can. All right, so that's neat, right? So and this may have not been the case, Dante, if maybe because they keep changing things on releases, right? So um, so we have that right there. Now, something additional that Javier pointed out that is really important for us is that this become a solid, right? So if you see right here on the option, well, let me show you guys how it should not look, right? So I'm going to exaggerate and I'm going to extrude it like that, right? So I rotate, notice that it's open, right? It's just the walls. We don't want that, right? So I'm going to delete that because it's open, right? So I select extrude surface, select the surface, enter, and notice that the setting right here says solid, no. All right. So I actually want to be solid, yes, right? And notice that I extrude it. Now it looks like a box. Now there's another setting that we should also be changing because we're gonna keep running into this whole menu selection thing. Because if I click here or here, let's see. All right, let's see. Well, it's not popping up, right? But let's see there, right? Because I have the surface and the poly surface, which again, I don't need the surface anymore. I just want to keep the poly surface. So there's another setting, right? When I type extrude, oops, extrude surface. So select the surface, right? And we want it to be solid equal to yes. And notice right here that it says delete input. I'm gonna switch back to yes, right? And as soon as I extrude, right, and move this out, that surface has disappeared. You can either see it as it combines them or it gets rid of it. Yeah, it either adds it to the solid or just removes it automatically. Yeah, right. Magical. Now the last thing that we need to just set is the extrusion distance, which is what Javier was talking about right now. So I can do extrude, right, surface. So notice that the settings are going to remain the same. Solid, yes. Delete input, yes. Some of these other options, we'll later get to play with. But now notice that it's asking me for the extrusion distance. And right now it's in decimals, but I can also do fractions. So, I mean, we want something thin, but not that thin. But this is where things can get a little. Let's do 164 and see how bad it is, or how good it is. So 164, right? Enter. And specify that direction, right? Do I want it to extrude on that direction or this direction? I'll do that one right there. So now we have that right there. Okay. Now let's do a distance, right? Because this actually can teach us something, right? If I type distance and measure the thickness, right? This is great. It's great that this is happening, right? What it's saying right there that the distance is 0. Why? Remember when we went to units, right? And we set our distance display? Correct, right? My distance is smaller than my precision. So Rhino is saying I'm rounding it to a 0. Right? So it's actually really good that this is happening because I made this error, I think, in class for another class. I think, I can't remember what class, right? So we need to change. If we're going to keep things in a precision of a 64, I need to change the precision to a 64th of an inch, right? So I click OK. And nothing changes. Remember, I'm not changing scale. I'm not changing anything. But if I type distance again, right, and you check this distance again, right, notice that now it's giving me 1/64. Uh, now it's not that it wasn't recognizing it, but I specified it, right? It's like just round up, right? It's kind of like when you're writing a text, right, and you have a limit of characters that you can use, right? I mean, your sentences change, right? I mean, you leave out certain words. So here is leaving out like, hey, like The software is not that it's wrong or right. It's just that I set up that the precision be to 1/32 rather than 1/64, right? So I'm glad that that happened. But we have to be mindful because now we're working with 1/64, and actually we do have a thickness, right? It's actually not the thickness of the paper, but the thickness of the what? If we look back into our models, not the basswood, the chipboard, right? The chipboard, which I think actually this will be 1/32. Okay, so actually that is good to know. Why am I bringing this up? Because again, if you start using certain dimensions right there, and you're building with other ones, there's some point that things are not going to match up, right? Again, if I'm saying that I'm using 1/64s and then this thing is 1/16th, right? Those dimensions are going to have to come from somewhere, right? I mean, and tolerances don't become very tolerant, right? So, um, so actually, we should probably change that to 1/32, right? Because can anyone confirm? Was it 1/32 the chipboard? Anyone? It depends which one you use, right? It depends, right, what you're doing, right? But and I don't think I don't know if that has 30 seconds. Probably just has the 16, but try the 16. And if it's okay, so I'm gonna just because this thing is recording, so I'm gonna do undo. I'm gonna extrude, right, the surface, select that right there to 1/32. Right, oops, that's the wrong directions. But I'm just gonna move it. 1/16, really chunky. Oh, okay. Someone help Jesus right there. All right, I'm gonna do them regardless, right? Remember, you're gonna model this. You know that's okay right here, right? Yes, Ingrid. You don't. It's about 1/16th. Yeah. You don't, but I mean, just be mindful of that. At any moment you start introducing members or things that are smaller than 1/32, the software is not gonna recognize them as such. So I mean, it's weird that you work with 30 seconds. It's weird that you work with 1/64ths, right? I mean, we're talking about again like objects, but in this case we are. So just be mindful about that. You can't just set it straight from 1/32, or I think always my files are to 1/16th, right? Just because, yeah, right, it's more common, right? I mean, but yeah, good question. You can just leave it to 1/32 if you know, or 1/16 if you know that that's the smallest that you're gonna go anywhere on the model. Mm-hmm. All right. Regardless of that, was that clear, right? So let's try this again, right? So extrude surface. So I can now extrude this one right here. Notice that it's on the wrong layer right there. So we select, I think that one's this one right here. Now notice that what's neat about this is that once I extrude one, notice that the distance, right, I can just press enter. Whoops. And it does that, but it does it on the opposite direction. Let me show you what's going on. So if I type extrude again, extrude surface, right, select that one right there. I want to place my, whoops, one more time, guys. Extrude surface. I want to place my cursor on this side of the board, and then I do 1/32. I enter, and then we do that. Right. So I right click to repeat the last command. Right. Select that surface. Right. Come back to the right layer. Right. And then right click. And notice that I didn't have to insert that distance, the extrusion distance, because it uses the last preset that you have. Right. I select that one right there. Select the right one right there. Right click. Do that. Right click. Now we're on the 3. Right click. Right click. That one right there. This one right here. Right click. I don't think that worked. What's going on? Oh no, it did work. Right click. Right click. That would be this one right here. And then that one right there. think you guys might be right. I think it's actually 116. This is looking really tiny, right? So that's 1/32. So this is actually not bad. I'll show you guys how to fix it. All right. So we have that right there under 1/32. Now another command that we're going to be using a lot, it's called scale 1D. Scale 1D. Anyone knows what that D might stand for? Dimension or direction, right? We're scaling things on one direction. What do I mean? I can scale things, if I type scale, I can scale things, scale 1D, scale 2D, right? It just basically means the proportions, right? So let me take this as a little example right here. You know, let's do a little parenthesis and see how this scaling thing works, right? So if I bring this right here, if I type scale, right, select that object, this is just scale, right? Scale, the standard scale, and I press 2, right? Base point, and then 2, right? It scales everything but by 2. Its width, its length, and its height. Everything is scaled by 2. Okay. If I select this object right here and make a copy, right, and I scale 2D, right, and I pick the base point and I press 2, only two axes are scaled, right, but not the other ones, right? And then if I scale, and I did that wrong, right? So I think it should be scale 2D, right, from there to there, it should be at 2, right? We're doing kind of like that right there. But in reality, what we want to do is scale 1D so that this makes it only thicker, right? So let me show you guys what that means, right? So if I scale one direction, right? I tell it, hey, software, so I want to scale that piece so that from there to there, it's equal to 1/16. You see, and now it became 2 times as big, right? Because if I do that with the regular scale, right, I select this right there and scale from here to here, right, make it to 1/16. It does it right there on this axis. It also does it on this axis and on this axis right here. So think about it stretching it. Yeah, I'm going to repeat this, right? So again, scale 1D direction, right? So scale that object, right? So that from there to there, it's equal to that. And since I know that I can be faster, I can select that, and that, right? And do them all at once, right? So that from there to there, it's that distance right there. Okay. Again, I'm going a little bit faster on that. Scaling takes a little bit of practice, but don't worry, just come see me and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But definitely keep under your radar the scale 1D because we're going to be using it a lot for the structure. And that's how maybe, and actually it will make more sense once we start extending things on the structure. All right, guys. So remember what have we done? Well, we turned curves into surfaces, which then we turn into polysurfaces. We turned line into planes, which then became volume. Yeah. 16th? 16th. Yeah, I think 16th should be fine. All right, guys. So now came the painful, not painful, but the time-consuming part of doing what? Well, before that, what do you have to do in order to create? Well, before that, what do you need? All the pieces, right? Right? Remember, you had a certain number. I actually think I changed it last minute, but you had to have a certain number of these, no? I think I actually did half of these, right? 2, 2, 4, 6, or something like that, right? All right. So that's time consuming, right? But here, what can we do? Copy, right? So I can do copy right here, right? So I can, even better, I can select all of them, right? So I have those right there. So those my two, that's my two, that's my two. I can select those two right there, right? Right click for copy, and I have now those right there, right? I can select those two, right? Now make more copies, right? But let me do it in a better way because this is kind of messy. This is starting to look kind of very messy. So let me move these guys kind of like over here, right? And then let's get rid of these ones right here. All right, let's do copies right here, right? So I think it was 6 of these, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, Ingrid? There is, but I don't want to confuse anyone. Yeah, well, I mean, if you actually do an array, right? Right, if you do an array, right, press enter when done. Number on the x direction, let's say that I think I wanted 4 of these, right? Number on the y, I want 1, right? And the z, I want 1. Right, so if I kind of like do that right there, and so we have that right there. Oh, sure, I'll show you this, right? So array, right? Array, regular array, and then select the object right there. Object to array, enter. How many of these were? 2, 3, 2. All right, 2. Well, it's not that fun, but we'll do the top one again, right? Do that from there, just make another copy right here, and then put, oops, just make sure that number on the y direction 1, the click from there. Oh man, okay, fine, do that, delete this, and I'll just do a copy of this one because, well, it's just one. Let's do this one right here again, because since this one is the one that we need a lot. So array, right? Select the object to array, enter. Number on the x direction, right? So we want 6, right? Because it's 6 copies of that. Now on the y direction, we only want to keep 1, right? So I'll do 1, right? If I do on the z, just do 1, right? Now the spacing, what the spacing means, right, is how they're gonna be separated apart, right? So I pick this corner right here, right? Notice that I keep moving on, and that creates, if I do that, right, well, they're going to be right next to each other. But if I spread them out like that, it works better. Now notice that it's still white. It says that's a preview. If I hit escape, it's going to disappear. So I need to do a enter, right, to accept. Just make sure that you move them out of the way so that they're not kind of overlapping. Keep it clean. Now let me do array one more time, and this would maybe even show you guys the beauty of it, right? So if I do array, right, object to array there. Now let's do 6 on the x, let's do maybe 8 on the y, right, and 3 on the z, right, and I do this spacing, right, you start creating that right there, right? So maybe that can help you understand better how array works, right? You start creating some sort of this field of objects, right? So it's an awesome command, right? I mean, you start creating some really cool stuff, right? And there's other sorts of arrays which are also really interesting. But if you were wondering, it's like, why is he doing a 1 on the y? Why is he doing a 1 on the z? That's why, because if I insert a y and a z, it's going to create like this field of things rather than just a little line, all right? So, I mean, again, when people ask it, like, well, is architecture a lot of math? Well, they're like, no, it's not. I guess there's some, right? I mean, it's just geometry, right? I mean, some simple things. So, okay, so 2, 4, 6, right? So I can do an array, right? Array this guy right here, right? 6. On the y, I want to go back to 1. On the z, I want to go back to 1, right? And then do the spacing right there. Enter. This one right here, we're 4, I guess. I can remember. Right. Do that. Right click. 2. Those were 2. Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys were the ones cutting them, so I believe you. All right. Do that. And I mean, when it's just one copy, because I just faster if you just type copy, but you know, start doing that right there. Okay. And then, yes, you guys are right? I mean, comes the part, right? I mean, when I can just copy or move, right? Let me use move so that I use the pieces, right? So I can, well, I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to copy all of this. So I'll bring this over here, and this is going to be my assembly area. So I'm going to move this one. And remember that I told you guys that you guys could make more, right? If you needed more pieces, you can make more pieces, so you can make copies, right? So this is where it's a little bit helpful, right? So I'm gonna select everything. I'm gonna zoom selected in all viewports. That's the right click right there. This is where it helps a little bit to start working three-dimensionally, right? The moment that you start kind of stacking them, right? So I'm just gonna, I don't know, I don't think anyone has a square grid right here and here, but you know, I'll just move, right? So I move that, maybe that from there, right? Start. Notice that this is where your O snap becomes super, super helpful. Right? So again, you can move this right from there to there, right? And start kind of creating that, right? And this one right here, maybe start bringing it somewhere. I don't know. Well, these are all easy. Let's talk about some more challenging ones. All right, guys. So when they line up, that's the easy part. The little harder part is when you have to kind of like flip them and rotate them, right? So this is where your gumball comes handy. So whenever you have an object in Rhino and you select it, notice that I get this thing, right? I mean the blue arch, the green, the red, right? That's called the gumball. And it can help me to move stuff, or it can help me to rotate stuff. See that? And depending on the axis, well, I can rotate and move in different directions, right? And I can start creating some more. And you can even scale, right? If I click there, or if I click right here, I can start enlarging things, right? And I can start distorting things very quickly. So be careful with it, right? I mean, so I'm just going back, not that much. Remember that since we were working with a very, very rigid system, things should actually work mathematically. What do I mean? Well, if I select that, and I, rather than just rotating it and kind of eyeing it and be like, yeah, I nailed it, right? Because probably you didn't, right? If I type move, right, and I bring this over here, right, notice that it's off, right? It's not on it, right? So, but I know that I can rotate it. How much? 180, right? So if you click once on the arc, notice that this box comes up, right? I type 180, enter. I do that. Now I type move, right, from there, right? And make sure that you grab it from the right place, which is the end, and you place it right there. And even better, right, we can so right now again they're being fused and we don't want that. I want to move it from there, right, to that perpendicular, and now they have that separation, and start getting kind of that, right? And you know, let's maybe, I mean, copy from there, you know, maybe start doing something kind of like over here, right? And maybe borrow some of these ones, right? So that was, whoops. So that was rotate, right? Let's say, thanks, Jonathan. Right. So now let's do maybe a not so easy rotation. Let's say that I want this edge to align with this edge right here. right? Well, I mean, if I use the gumball, right, like to begin with, what angle is that? I don't know. It's probably like a, is it a 150? One, 160? Let's see what 160 does. So I do 160, right? Right. So I want to rotate, right? So I want this line to align with this line right here, right? Well, we can actually do a rotation, right? We can do a rotation, right? Now if I type rotate, right, like that right there. So I tell it from there. Oops, except that's the wrong direction. Well, that's not working. We have to do it from the front. Yeah. So if I go to the front, right, I want to rotate this guy right here. So I type rotate, do that, and then I can do that right there. That's what I wanted to do. All right. So I start getting some of those pieces right there. And well, I mean, I don't know what else to throw in here. Right? I mean, I don't know. I wish we had something to kind of like copy, but oops, not rotate. Right. So we're trying to form your form. And maybe start doing something like that, or I don't know, maybe move this one like that. Like that right there. Now it also works when you're moving stuff. Right? So right now I want to get that thing out of there, right? I mean, it's being you know it's overlapping with that one right there. So I can select this guy right there. I can click once on that arrow, and how much do I need to move it so that they're not overlapping? 116, right? So if I type 1/16, right, enter, right, it moves it, right? Except that what happened? It went the other way, right? So what can I do? Negative 116, right? And it brings it negative 2 pi. Oh, right. Right, so we have that right there. Let's say maybe I want to bring some of these other forms, maybe kind of over here, right? And again, that's kind of overlapping. So again, I can move this negative 116, but it's also overlapping there. So I move it one more time, negative 116, and it's kind of there, right? All right. Let's say that we're in love with this form, right? Like, oh my God, this is great. Right? There it is. Right. So that's the one. Something that we haven't done, which we should have done very, very early ago, and quite a bit. It's saving, right? Rhino's pretty good at recovering files, and I mean, sending you back to where you left off. But don't forget, right? File, save as. I'm gonna call this. This is how I name things. So I name them by the semester. So this is Spring 20, Studio 2, Rhino Intro, AM, right? And do that right there. So, get to the habit of a naming convention. Maybe throw in there the semester, the class. There's going to be a point that you're going to be looking for files. You're going to be working on your portfolio. Or you're going to be just looking. Right? I mean, like, I know that I have that from this semester. You have like this list of files, right? Final, project 1, project 2, and like, midterm or whatever. You're going to be like, midterm of what? Like, what class was that? Right? So anyway, it helps, right? So at least for me, for teaching, right, I need to know the semester and what class that was, and of course some sort of what's on that file. Um, All right, guys. So let's say, fine, we get that, right? We get that right there. I mean, and again, that was the module, right? So let's say that I copy this guy right here. So I'm gonna go back to the front view. Right, so I'm gonna copy this guy right here, right? Because from there, right, I can do more copies, right? So I can copy this, right? Right, I can copy it, let's say from here to right here, right? And then I can select these two, okay, and then copy them from there to there, and then maybe to there, right? And I start getting right the pattern right there. Now you could, right? So again, that's being smart, right? That's being like, can you array this? Yeah, definitely you can, right? Even before we do that, right? That's actually something that I realized that we need to do, right? Because it's really easy, right? To again, copy this thing right here and kind of move it and copy it, right? But right now, all of these pieces are still separate, right? You need to what? Group them, right? Join them is a different kind of animal, right? I mean, join them is something different, right? But remember that your pieces were glued, right? They were like little pieces, and then, well, you made copies of this, right? So you had the original, you went and made copies, you cut them, right? But that was one single piece of paper with all the colors on top of it, right? Right now here they're separate, right? So I need to select everything, and I type group, group, and now notice that I click on it, and then everything gets highlighted. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter what I do with it or if I move it, everything comes together. Then I can copy it, right? And then I can start having more fun, right? If I click on my red or my green arc right there, maybe I rotate it, let's say 90 degrees, right? I start doing that. I copy it right here to the side, right? And then rotate this one other 90 degrees, right? And then copy this one right here to the side, right? And then rotate it. Well, it's gonna send me back to where I started, right? But that's okay, because then I can start moving this one's right here, right? And say maybe from there to here, right? Um, and I can just start doing exactly what you guys were doing, right? I mean, having fun with the patterns, arranging your pieces right there, creating the pinwheel right there, bringing this one right here. Hmm. Yeah, guys, I'm making this seem very, very easy, but I mean, if you're just starting, I mean, I think the first and most important thing is for you to know how to move stuff around. Like, I think that's one of the most kind of like tricky parts that, well, yeah, it's just like practice. It's just like handling, dribbling a ball, playing soccer. I mean, it's not just kicking the ball, right? But it's knowing how to handle the ball. So it's again how to navigate through the software. I think it's a big part of it, right? It's Google SketchUp on steroids, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's way more advanced. All right, all right, guys. Well, why don't we we're gonna have to leave it there. But what I like to see for next class is for you to actually get to this point. Right? I mean, just try to do this. Right? What we've been doing so far, follow everything, to the method right there, and again, grab some headphones, right? Pick again all of this. The Rhino is on the lap. The computer. Oh, let me pause this right here. Questions? I think that maybe no. Good. No. Good. All right.